Hello and welcome to another episode of The Legend of Nobunaga. Today we're starting chapter 5 and facing the Battle of Anigawa. Only one battle in this chapter, so it shouldn't take too long, against the Asakura Azai army. Now at the end of the last episode I explained the precedent for this battle and why it was taking place. I'll explain it a little bit more when we're in here, just as a reminder. We can see I'm forced to take Kicho and Mitsuhide Akechi for some reason, which will turn out not to be for any particular reason. At the top you can see it says Nagamasa Azai has betrayed Nobunaga, which is a bit of a twisting of the tale, because in many ways Nobunaga betrayed him.
Without victory, victory and even more victory, we'll never move ahead. Let's get moving! Sir!
So he's convinced that winning this battle can save him. Maybe it can. So it's time for the final battle at Anigawa. As I said last time, there were a few battles before this, but I'll explain them once the battle gets going.
Lord Tokugawa and his forces have just arrived!
Lord Nobunaga, I make you this promise. The enemy shall soon fear the men of Mikawa. Ieyasu, good luck to you.
I'm fighting too! Nagamasa must
like
be
a
punished.
child.
He's forgotten his debt to you!
I'm counting on you. The fighting must be brought to an end, no matter what price we pay. It must stop before the land itself is destroyed.
So Nobunaga wants to end all fighting by doing as much fighting as he possibly can. So we saw Tokugawa Ieyasu show up, and he's going to be the real star of this story. I guess I'll talk about his role once we see him in the battle.
Let's start.
Our scouts have come back with the following reports.
So to start off, let's have a little look at the field of battle. It took place on a river, this battle, and as it does in the game, just like it did in real life.
In this battle, we must defeat the two enemy commanders, Nagamasa Azai and Yoshikage Asakura. Azai is positioned in this area, while Asakura is in this area.
So they've reversed the historical formation. They were swapped around from how they've shown it here in real life, with Azai on the right and Asakura on the left.
My men and I will circle around the enemy and hit them from the side.
My lord, how shall we deploy for this battle?
So Tokugawa wasn't really being used as a flanking force. He was part of the main line, and a very important part of the main line. But I can talk about this once we're started, of course. So it forces me to take these units, you can see. I'm not sure why Mitsuhide Akechi had to come. It seems quite straightforward, the map. It's just a river. The enemy forces on one side and us on our side, which is fairly historically accurate. I decided to deploy all my high level units, thinking that this could actually be a hard battle, because the last time I fought the Azai army they were kind of cheaty, and we'll see they're a little bit cheaty again in this battle. If I'd taken Katsuye here, it would have been very historically accurate, but I decided to go for Masanori instead, to try him out. He's one of the units I unlocked for defeating Azai last time I faced him. So I was thinking, probably be a good idea to use him against Azai, just for some poetic justice. So I get this great tip to aim for the enemy's weak point. So thanks for that game, that tip really helped. I was going to go for their strong point, but it really changed my mind. So without further ado, let's start the battle.
Understood. With this, we can all concentrate on fighting.
All right, let's move out. Remember, we fight for the land and for peace.
Yeah, whatever, Nobunaga. Whatever. So it's finally time to face off against those annoying allies, the Azai and Asakura.
Finish them! Charge them!
Not so different from the orders he actually gave in the battle. So to start off, I'm just going to be running over some enemy units, so let's begin to talk about the actual historical events. So just before the Battle of Anigawa, as I mentioned at the end of the last episode, Nobunaga tried to attack two of Azai's castles at Odani and Yokoyama, and the attack at Yokoyama was basically supporting the attack on Odani. It's like Yokoyama is a fortress protecting Odani Castle, so he had to attack Yokoyama before he could attack Odani. And that was actually mentioned at the end of the last level in one of the cutscenes. He mentioned he was doing that, so the game actually referenced that historical event, so I was pretty impressed with that. So he attacks this castle and he spends 3 days sieging the castle, and well, he really doesn't get very far with it. The castle proves impregnable to him, and during the 3 days it gives the Azai and Asakura forces time to build up a large field army and build it to the north of his position. And so, if, as the game implies, that Nobunaga's plan with his attack was to draw their forces out, he succeeded, but I'm not sure that really was his plan. I think he actually wanted to capture the castle without fighting a pitched battle. But in the end, the enemy forces were getting very close, and he decided to take them out. So he broke off the siege, essentially. I guess I should explain the situation. Yokoyama is on the south side of the Ane River, and the enemy's force was coming from the north side of the Ane River. So Nobunaga set up his big army on the south side of the Ane River. This is the Ane River we're seeing in the game. We're fighting it right now. That's why the battle is called Anegawa. It's named after the Ane River. Anyway, so he sets up his forces on the south side of the river. And he has Tokugawa Ieyasu joins him with 5,000 reinforcements. Nobunaga had about 10,000 troops at this stage in history. And yes, Tokugawa Ieyasu brought 5,000 more, but he brought 5,000 high quality troops, so they would come in extremely useful during this battle. So Nobunaga leaves a screening force at Yokoyama. A screening force, it means he was trying to keep the people he was besieging inside the castle from getting involved in the battle. So he left a small cursory force just to keep the castle under control, where his main force set up on the river, ready for battle. He was very enthusiastic about destroying the Azai main force in the field, because that would make taking Odani very much easier. But of course the Asakura were reinforcing the Azai, so it wasn't going to be so easy. So it was a battle of two allies against two other allies, Nobunaga and Ieyasu, versus Azai Nagamasa and Asakura Yoshikage. So they both sides camped on their respective sides of the river overnight, and in the morning they decided to run at each other, and the battle ensued in a not particularly impressive form. There aren't many historical records of the actual tactics used, but it's pretty much assumed they just came at each other full frontal. So, as I mentioned earlier, the formations were slightly different to how it's presented in the game. Ieyasu Tokugawa formed all of Nobunaga Oda's left flank, and he basically faced up against the entire Azai army, whereas the entire Asakura army, whereas Nobunaga was facing the Azai army on the right flank. The Azai army was much smaller than Nobunaga's army, and yet in the initial engagements Nobunaga was faring quite badly. He was going to lose at first, basically. You can see here in the game I found this strange letter. I'm not sure what it was about really. It didn't come in very useful in the end. Anyway, Nobunaga was basically... Oh, here we go. Ieyasu shows up in the game in the top right hand corner, and I'm basically not going to see him for the whole level. He just sits up there doing his thing. He doesn't die. I don't know what he does, but I guess he helps out.
Those who turn their back on obligation shall be destroyed by it!
So Azai shows up shouting about obligation, which I guess makes sense because he has a great many obligations forcing his hand. So I was forced to fight Azai. I think my tactics on this level were quite bad. I shouldn't have advanced so quickly. I should have tried to draw some of the enemies across the river rather than going across to meet them. But we can talk about that in a moment. Tatsuoki Saito shows up as well with his brother Toshimitsu. So for maybe the 4th time I have to fight Tatsuoki Saito. It makes sense because he did actually join the Asakura clan after his defeat in Mino, if you remember that back in chapter 3. So it makes sense that he would show up here, so it's not so bad. Anyway, so Nobunaga was losing the battle, but luckily for him, Tokugawa he just performed unusually well. He basically pushed the entire Asakura army completely off the field. So Tokugawa, with this very small force, took out a very large number of Asakura soldiers, and he pushed them so far back that he was then able to attack the Azai force's flank. Basically, Tokugawa was fighting slightly upriver from where Nobunaga was. So Tokugawa, once he felt safe leaving the Asakura army to flee, he charged downriver and smashed into the Azai army's flank. Meanwhile, Nobunaga, seeing that he was in trouble, had deployed a reserve force. The reserve force was led by, I think it was Inaba Etetsu, that was it. He was one of the Mino 3. If you very carefully remember back to chapter 3, we saw that Mino had 3 main officers, and Inaba Atetsu was one of them. And he defected to Oda, and he was one of the key players in this battle, because he outflanked the Azai force on the other side from where the Tokugawa army was flanking it, which meant Azai was surrounded on 3 sides, and that wasn't good news for him. You can see in the level that my left flank is being actually pummeled by Azai, so historically accurate events are happening in the game, which is very, very realistic. If I deployed Katsuye and Hideyoshi over there instead of Hideyoshi and who did I have? Masanori? Yeah, Masanori. Then it would have been completely historically accurate. Because what actually happened was in the initial charge by the Azai army, both Katsuye Shibata and Hideyoshi Hashiba were defeated. They were basically brushed aside by the Azai army's attack. And it was Yoshinari Mori, the guy who at the beginning of every war council says, here's the plan. At the beginning of every stage select says, this is the current situation. That guy, who I never use in the game because he's too low level. But that guy basically saved Oda. The Oda main camp would have been destroyed very early on in the battle if he hadn't been there to stop them. So, yeah, the story pretty much ends there. So Azai was surrounded on 3 sides and retreated. Although this was one of the major battles of the time, not that many people died. Probably only about 3,000 of the 50,000 or so taking part. You can see that Hideyoshi's in a bit of trouble here. He's being attacked by 3 units and has, well, pretty much 0 men left. So I decided to try and save his life by running from the field. And it's not going to go too well because now he has, I think it's 4 enemy units hunting him down. I think the big problem was that when I was facing the Azai force on the left side of the screen, he had 2 ranged units which were pummeling me the whole time. And they had sort of waged a war of attrition. So I gave Hideyoshi this movement buff and told him to run away, hoping he would make it with his added speed. Told him to go and chill by that village. Meanwhile, Nobunaga's coming in to try and deal with the still fairly powerful Azai force here on the left side.
Attack!
So you can see it said Hideyoshi Hashiba defeated an Azai captain and then died instantly. So 2 of the units that chased him down came at him. Hideyoshi killed one of them and then was killed by the other. So a heroic last stand and a historically accurate defeat for Hideyoshi Hashiba. So it's not too bad they lost him in this level, sorry. And now I'm using Kuroku's ninjas. I switched to using ninja units on the recommendation of one of the viewers who said that they were really good. And they are indeed extremely good, I found. They have very high stats, although you have very low health when you play as ninjas, but it's sort of okay because their stats are so high that they just kill all the enemy units before they get hit too much, so they're pretty good. One of the other strange things about this battle, oh, before I say that, watch this. This was a first. So Nagamasa Azai, as well as being a cheaty guy who can resurrect his troops, he can also summon tornadoes apparently. And this was a big problem for my troops. So a lot of my horsemen get whipped up in this tornado. I think this is Kicho's unit being attacked. So that was very cheeky from him. So Kicho is knocked to the verge of destruction. You can see she has a very small amount of her total troop count left. So I need to try and do something. Otherwise both Kicho and Nobunaga Oda are going to be very much at risk. And if they die, then the battle's over. So I actually need to really focus on keeping these guys alive. I was just going to say that the strange thing about this battle was that Nobunaga left this screening force behind at Yokoyama, but during the battle, because Yokoyama is on a hill to the south of the valley that this river is in, they could see the battle taking place and they kind of wanted some of the action. So a lot of the guys snuck off from the siege to sneak down and take part in the battle in the river. So I guess they wanted to be here that badly, then so be it. I had no negative repercussions luckily because the garrison of Yokoyama pretty much didn't get involved at all. So you can see I'm now finally laying the beat down on Nagamasa. He has if he hasn't already, his health has restored a couple of times, so the weird cheaty thing he did the last time I saw him is still happening. Over on the right flank, things are still going pretty well.
Now is the time to show your skill.
Basically, Toshie, Mitsuhide and Koroku had a complete field day. They just easily destroyed all the enemy units on the right side. I guess they were helped out by the fact that Ieyasu was distracting some enemy units up in the top right hand corner, and I think Ieyasu actually defeats all the enemy units that attack him. So he did help me out in this battle, not as much as he would have historically, but he did help me out a fair bit. Luckily I could see some health on the, well, I can't see it anymore, there's some health on the other side of the river. So when I saw that I thought it wouldn't be so bad because I can get Kichu up to full health again. You saw just then Nagamasa Azai restored like 1,000 troops, like a really small amount. So his weird cheaty health restoring thing wasn't so powerful this time.
I gave my best. I have no regrets.
So we saw him from the field. In the historically wrong order as well, because it was Asakura who left first. Basically everything about this battle is sort of reversed when it comes to the behaviour of the enemy. So now what I have to do really is attack the enemy main camp right in the middle.
Truly are.
So Mitsuhide's unit's going to have full health by the time they get there. Plus I have Ieyasu Tokugawa to sacrifice. I say sacrifice because I don't believe you lose any points in the game for casualties taken by allied units. So it was a good idea to send Ieyasu in first to take the brunt of any enemy charges out of the base. I had to get this item first though. I guess I should talk about what happened after the battle a little bit. Basically, once Azai was retreating, Nobunaga could have gone after him and tried to destroy his army and perhaps capture Odani. But he decided not to because his force had been so heavily damaged by the fighting with the Azai that he decided to just go back to Gifu Castle. So in many ways it was like a non-decisive battle because neither army was destroyed. All Nobunaga did was capture the river and then he abandoned it straight away. So although it is one of the largest battles of the era, really nothing came of it. And as I said, the casualty rate on both sides wasn't particularly high. I think the main issue was that especially the Asakura side lost a great many officers. So despite still having a fairly large army by the end, they didn't have so many officers. So it sort of damaged their ability to put armies into the field after that point. But of course, they would get some more. We're going to be seeing the Azai and Asakura again. I believe it's 3 years historically until Nobunaga actually defeats the Azai and Asakura. That's a spoiler by the way, he does defeat them eventually. But then, I guess you should have guessed that because if he didn't, he wouldn't be such a legendary character. He really does defeat pretty much everyone in Japan against all odds. So here we are, assaulting the enemy main base. Here's Asakura himself.
Prepare yourself, Nobunaga!
His voice actor has changed for some reason since the last battle, at least I believe it has. And he sends his archers in a full frontal assault in this cutscene. So a little bit weird, but whatever. Those cutscenes are kind of pointless.
Sometimes brute strength is
So
the
victory seems pretty inevitable now. I have pretty much every unit
Show your skill in
really
battle.
piling in. I was sort of desperate to use all my abilities because they level up, as I mentioned before, if you use them for any reason. So at the end of the battle it's good to just spam all of your troop skills and abilities, just so you can get some experience for them. Plus they do help in the battle, makes it go a little bit faster.
Come and get some of this!
I'm trying to form Koroku into one of my main officers. He isn't a particularly important character historically, he is a historical character. He joined Oda's army along with Hideyoshi as he did in the game back in chapter 2. He was a bandit leader that Hideyoshi had hired to help fight the Imagawa early on. So the game implied that he was one of Hideyoshi's friends or someone he worked with, but he wasn't really, he was a mercenary. But after being hired by Hideyoshi, he permanently joined the Oda forces and was also involved in Hideyoshi's attack on Inuyama Castle.
Trust in your men and fight.
I think he was in the strike team that I talked about in that episode where Hideyoshi pretty much won the entire battle for Nobunaga, as he tends to do. You can see he's down to half health despite only having lost a few hundred men. That's just a disadvantage of the ninja units.
It's too late to start crying!
The advantage of them is that they can sort of phase through your own troops. Their special skill is
Now
like a
is our
teleport
chance.
skill. They sort of jump forwards and phase through your own units, which means you can attack enemies who are already engaged with your units without the risk of hitting your own men, which is extremely useful. Speaking of hitting your own men, I charge into my own ranks here. The charge would have gone through and hit Yoshikage, but Yoshikage used an officer skill at the last minute. And whilst using officer skills, enemies are invincible to all attacks. And there was the skill he used. He pretty much decimated us. You can see Ieyasu and Tadakatsu of the Tokugawa force have taken heavy casualties. So they've taken a lot of the brunt of this battle. Which again is the opposite of what happened historically. Because the Tokugawa force was very successful, whereas Oda took the majority of the losses on his side.
How could I lose like this?
So another voice actor change for Asakura, and he is sent from the field. I guess they had loads of voice actors. Just got to cycle between them.
Well,
Enemy officer defeated, it just says at the bottom. Nothing special about that ending. So there we go, the battle is finished. The final battle at Anagawa has been won. The description of it being a final battle is pretty historically inaccurate. There's almost no way in which it was final. It wasn't even the final battle of the Azai Asakura War. Because although they did stop fighting temporarily as a result of it, the war was sort of continuing. It became a cold war for a few years before resuming actual conflict. You can see I got some pretty cool drops. The Secrets of the Art of War taught 3 skills simultaneously to the officer it had equipped. Some cool armor and this cool horse, which isn't stopped when hit during Rampage. That sounds pretty useful to me. And a whole bunch of levels up. Kicho leveled up twice, as did Mitsuhide Akechi, which is pretty cool. Whole bunch of skill levels up. There's the X heal, and yeah, Kicho was promoted. I still don't really know what causes those promotions. I think it's just if one unit kills a very large proportion of the enemy units, which just happened by random chance in this battle to be Kicho. So there we go. So we're going to see, now that Nobunaga's dealt with that threat, what's the next threat going to be?
At the Battle of Anagawa, but the alliance of Azai and Asakura was still powerful and would continue to plague his
So
footsteps.
it wasn't a final battle. Even the game admits it.
have you heard the news? They are praising you as the White Falcon of Oda.
Pretty sure they made that up.
The white beasts are signs of good luck. Still, they stand out, and so are not allowed in the herd.
Very lonely.
You have earned your place in Oda.
Mitsuhide was a master swordsman, so it's possible he could have a nickname like that.
You and I have met before this. Huh? If I recall, you were Kicho's guard. Why were you driven from Mino?
Must I answer that question? I left that behind when I left Mino.
A dark past.
Both the good and the bad.
And sorry about the weird glitch at the bottom. It happened again like
I
it did at the end of one of
apologize for asking.
the other episodes.
Fine.
Not sure what causes that.
I have no interest in the past.
Just ignore it.
My Lord Nobunaga,
What is it?
here at Honnouji, the defenses are rather light in places. Allow me to strengthen them.
Actually, I was told the very same thing by Kicho, and have already arranged for the work to be done.
By Lady Kicho?
If you know the
Oh.
history of what's going to happen to Nobunaga, this is extremely
Forgive me for
foreshadowing for Mitsuhide Akechi. Basically, Mitsuhide, his desire to up the defensive could have been a desire to sabotage the castle. But anyway, we're into chapter 6. It's called The Tumult of the Genki Era. So Japanese history is divided into a number of eras that will have various names, which I don't really understand
After
actually.
his victory at Anagawa, Nobunaga begins once again his drive to bring peace to the land.
Well, I'm not sure what it means by that, because pretty much nothing
On the
happened
other
after the
hand,
Battle of
while
Anagawa.
pretending friendship to Nobunaga, his lordship Yoshiaki gathered together Oda enemies, including Miyoshi, Azai, Asakura, and even Shingen Takeda of Kai. He plotted to surround and destroy Nobunaga.
It's a little bit preemptive of the game, but it's not so far from what actually happened after the battle. I'll explain in a moment once we're through these cutscenes. So here we are at Yoshiaki's palace in Kyoto, and here's Tatsuoki Saito. Can't get rid of him.
We have arranged for Miyoshi, Asakura, Azai, and the sects to march.
The enemy's been almost totally surrounded. And so now, once Lord Takeda joins us here in the capital,
Checkmate! Tatsuoki, very well done. My lord, I thank you for your praise. But in truth, it was not just me alone that made this possible.
Wasn't him at all, really.
You saying that? Please pass that one my thanks as well.
So they're alluding to some mystery character. Who knows who it is?
Are you still seeing the same dream?
Yes. Lately, it comes more often.
Lord Nobunaga! The Miyoshi trio have landed at Setsu! Our scouts say they have taken Noda Fukushima!
Oh snap. So there we go, fairly historically accurate with the mention of the Miyoshi trio. A lot of the other names that were dropped in those cutscenes
review our strategy.
were a little bit incorrect.
Sir!
My lord, this is the current situation.
So we're going to take a look at what sort of stages Chapter 6 has to offer us. And it's only one. It's Noda Fukushima, so the decisive battle of Chapter 6 has appeared right away as well, just like in Chapter 5. So it's going to be another short chapter, just a single episode. Unless it's one of the ones where there are cheekily 2 decisive battles, we'll see, against the Miyoshi army. So this is vaguely historically accurate, because what happened after the Battle of Anagawa, pretty much immediately after the Battle of Anagawa, well, like a month after, say, there was a big Buddhist uprising in the Setsu province. Setsu, on the map you can see here, is slightly down and to the left of where Noda Fukushima is marked. Noda Fukushima on this map is basically where Kyoto is. Down and to the left of the province of Setsu, and they had a big Buddhist rebellion. And the way the Miyoshi clan is being realistically referenced is because the Miyoshi clan supported this rebellion and even sent troops to support it, as well as Tatsuoki Saito. He actually supported this rebellion. So I guess Tatsuoki must have drifted away from the Asakura clan after their defeat and decided to support these rebels. So he really was just doing everything he could to fight the Oda clan. Maybe he was holding a grudge against them taking his homeland, who knows. So there was this big rebellion, and Nobunaga, pretty much immediately after the Battle of Anagawa, sent out troops to try and defeat this rebellion, and historically he would not succeed. So I'm going to be very interested to see how the next chapter describes these events. It talked about the Azai and Asakura being involved in this league against Nobunaga, and they pretty much were. And they will try and attack Kyoto once Nobunaga fails to quell this rebellion. And in fact, their attack on Kyoto is going to give them a chance to kill some of Nobunaga's closest retainers. But I'm probably going to talk about that next time. It's the sort of thing the game might decide to talk about. So that's all for now on the Legend of Nobunaga. But there is one more thing I want to mention before we go. It's the thing I've been promising to mention for many episodes, and that is, what is the Ashigaru hat? You might have noticed that some troops in the game, the Ashigaru foot soldier troops, wear a conical hat, and I've said many times I'm going to tell you what it's called, and I finally wrote it down on a piece of paper and I've got it in front of me, so I can finally tell you what it's called. It is called a Jingasa. How you pronounce it is not clear. Jingasa. But yes, I knew it was something beginning with J. And yes, so they would have been made of leather or like lacquered wood or even iron. So they were essentially a piece of armor. But it was common for peasants and farmers to wear it as well. So it's sort of, I don't know if it was used as a status symbol, but it certainly seems like it might have been to show that they were not samurai. Although some Ashigaru would wear proper helmets just like the samurai. It depended on a million things, because Ashigaru is a very loose term. It basically just means infantry. So like an Ashigaru soldier isn't really a thing, it's just a very loose classification that means you're not formally a samurai or of the samurai class. But there you go, I told you about it. The one other thing I want to say is that in the cutscene it said that Takeda was being involved in the league against Nobunaga, and at this stage in history I don't think they really were. Takeda at this stage is still at war with the Imagawa clan far to the east, the remnants of the Imagawa clan. And even in a few years, in 1573, when Takeda will attack the Tokugawa clan, they really weren't doing it like as part of ambition to get to Kyoto, which is what the game very vaguely implies, that Yoshiaki was inviting them to Kyoto. But really, they weren't doing that invasion as part of that mission. They just wanted to beat Tokugawa to gain local superiority over their area of Japan. I don't think Takeda Shingen was being too ambitious. Takeda Shingen, the leader of the Takeda clan, is one of the great strategists of the era, but I'll talk about him when we meet him in the game. That's all for now. I'll see you next time in The Legend of Nobunaga when we start Chapter 6 and see if Nobunaga can deal with this huge cadre of enemies which has been brought against him by the Shogun. See you next time.